I prided myself with being the best athlete in a Ranger unit that I served in the Army. But then I got into the job and I just put on a tremendous amount of weight. The word that hit me was fat bastard. Fatbastard.org. It's going to take you to my website because I bought that domain.
Oh, did you really?
No one sits there and says, I'm going to lose 20 pounds because it's the most important thing in my life. No, there has to be something deeper. I'm going to be a participant in my family's life. I'm not going to be a spectator. A friend sees you in March and then they see you in November and you've lost 66 pounds. They're going to ask some questions.
I mean, they're going to try and make out with you is what I would really expect.
Well, no. Well, maybe a couple of them did.
Hi, everybody. This is Dan and Dante. Welcome to another episode of Middle-Aged Mess, the show for people who haven't stood up without groaning for at least 10 years. Today, we're going to talk about getting healthy and staying fit with Allan Misner. Allan, what's happening?
Hey, Dan, how are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for coming out. You're in Panama, huh?
Yeah. My wife and I did what everybody talks about doing. We sold everything and we moved to a Caribbean island.
Living the dream, living the absolute dream. I'm going to talk to you after the podcast how I can get down there. I'm going to buy the condo next to yours.
Well, I have a house. It's actually a bed and breakfast that I live in. So the house next to mine might be for sale soon, though.
Well, let's talk. We got to get ourselves a broker. Allan, come on. Let's work on this. Help a brother out.
Well, I was a military brat. So we lived in multiple states and overseas and then settled into Mississippi. So for the most part, I call that home because that's where I went to high school and college.
You don't have the Mississippi twang at all. Zero.
I chose not to. We moved down there when I was about 14. So it was about that age. I pretty much had lived in so many different places and on military bases with so many different people that the longer I talk to you, the more I'll pick up your idioms and sound more like where you're from. It's just kind of a habit that I've developed.
You just turned into a chameleon, You were like in 14 different countries? States.
But I've lived in 14 different states.
So what was that? I mean, do you have the typical military brat existence, like not a lot of friends, had to learn how to meet people really quickly, you tend to kind of be in your own head a little bit because you're forced to, kind of that type of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do have some great friends, but I keep friends for life for the most part. But yeah, I'm a little bit come and go. If someone comes into my life and they're cool, then they're cool. If they come in my life and they're not cool, then they're not my life anymore. It's about that simple.
So did that lead to like your focus on fitness in your life? Because I imagine as a kid, you're moving around, like working out and kind of doing things would maybe be the safety net for you.
I was an athlete growing up. And all the way up through my early 30s, I was very, very fit. I prided myself on being the best athlete on the team. I prided myself with being the best athlete in a Ranger unit that I served in the Army. But then I got into the job, and the career was a seating job, lots of travel. And I just put on a tremendous amount of weight. Health and fitness kind of took a back seat. And I found myself at about the age of 39 living like I was 69. You were talking about aches and pains and all this stuff.
That's all I ever talk about. That's all I
was middle-aged at 39. I mean, I was headed down the other side of the slope. And for about 8 years, I really, really struggled to figure this all out because I would do the things, I downloaded the Insanity workout DVDs and I was going to do it. I did the benchmark workout and I couldn't get out of bed the next morning. So I quit. I never did any of the workouts. I just did the benchmark and then that was it. And so I kept trying and failing. My daughter had just turned about 20 and she was getting into the CrossFit stuff. And she was so excited about it. And she was doing these obstacle course races and she was doing CrossFit. And so she called me when we were talking on the phone one day and she said, Daddy, and that's a Southern thing. For a 20-year-old girl to still call her father Daddy.
Right.
But she's like, Daddy, I'm going to do this CrossFit competition. Would you come watch?
Yeah.
And that just hit me in the gut, man, because I never thought of myself as being a spectator in my daughter's life.
God forbid. That's right. You're in the bleachers. What a loser.
I wanted to be a participant. And so I was like, no. I mean, yeah, of course. I went and watched her. But I was like, this is not
How'd she do?
I am.
How'd she do in the competition?
She did all right. She was not ever really super, super competitive, but she just had so much fun. I think that was the core of it.
I've watched those CrossFit competitions on TV, and it's shocking Like, it's shocking what those people do. It's not like they're fit. They're almost like aliens. I mean, they can walk on their hands. They're throwing balls all over. They're running miles and miles. Like, they're swimming. They do things that, like, it doesn't seem like a normal workout. And I did CrossFit for like a year after my divorce. And so I got kind of into the whole multi-dimensional workouts and but what they do is unbelievable.
It is. It is. They're super athletes, and of course, CrossFit says that they're defining who is the fittest person on earth, fittest man, fittest
For
female.
sure.
They have a master's level, so fittest old guy, I guess, no fittest old girl. But the reality of it is, most of us are. That's not what we need. That's not the fitness level we
Yeah.
need. Now, at that point in my life, though, I wanted to be in my daughter's life, and I wanted to be at that level. So I did. I did train myself over the course of the next 8 months
But
because
wait, I do want to get into that. Before we get into that, I actually want to go back a little bit first. You said you were an
okay.
Army Ranger.
I was not a Ranger.
Oh,
I was
okay.
I was in a Ranger unit.
Okay.
Had I re-upped, they probably would have sent me to Ranger school.
Well, Rangers are like some of the fittest people in the Army. I mean, you must have been a real stud
Yeah.
back then, right?
I was pretty good. Yeah.
So you go, and what,
Yeah.
you were like in your 20s, I imagine, at that point?
Yeah, I was about 23, 24,
Okay.
and I was in a Ranger unit, and we were 101st Airborne. So,
And you were
we
jumping out of
jumped out of
planes.
not out of planes, out of helicopters. They call us airborne, but we were basically in helicopters. So we rappelled out of helicopters and ran around with like that. So we were what they'd call Op 4-1. So basically, we were one of the primary units that if there was ever a conflict, we would be one of the first people on the ground.
Did you see any combat in your time?
I did not. I fell right in the gap. I got out and started back into college, and then that's when Desert Storm happened.
Got it.
And so everybody's like, well, are you afraid you're going to go back? I'm like, not unless they start killing a lot of people, because I'm, that's what I was. I was fodder. Supply chain and personnel and things like that. Those folks were the ones that are going to get brought back into the military because you need 5 of them for 1 of me. And so that's, just for me, I knew I wasn't going to end up back in there, even though I was at the time still what they called, inactive. So I did 2 years active, 6 years inactive. So I was still technically in the military.
Well, because this is the really interesting thing. It's the descent into middle-aged mess, which I think is usually the most interesting part. And then there's like the journey out, which is usually quick. It's like usually like the last 3 minutes of the podcast. But so let's talk about the descent. You get out of the Army. You're probably in amazing shape, right? You're in your 20s. You go to college. My guess is, like me, you're working out the recreational sports facility 3 or 4 or 5 times a week, playing basketball, doing all sorts of stuff, staying in great shape. And then talk to me about the ages between 27 and 39 when you kind of looked at yourself and said, oh, fuck, what happened?
I focused so much on my career because in my mind, yes, the whole thing. What's the story? The story is the American dream. The American dream is you get the job, you work really hard, and you get the promotions. Now, because I was so, I would say, fungible, meaning I would move anywhere, go anywhere, do anything.
Doing it all your life. You're used to it, yeah.
I would just get up. So if they're like, okay, we want you to move here for this promotion, I'm there. If they say this job is in another state, I'm there. So
what were you
was
doing? What was your profession at the time?
I was internal audit, which is another thing, which is huge high stress.
Yeah.
Because what a lot of people will hear the auditor and they immediately hate me. They immediately
I hate you. Just FYI,
auditor, right.
I can't stand you. In fact, I might cut this podcast right now, but
and I deserve every bit of that. No, but the point being is I was never in there to get anyone. I was in there to help people do things right. And that was always my approach. But that doesn't matter. I'm the auditor. I was very good at my job, which also meant that I was involved in a lot of fraud investigations and a lot of other stuff that went on.
Were you working for the government? Were you working for the government?
No, I work inside a company. So every public company is required to have an internal audit group that looks over their controls and makes sure that they're doing the things they say they're doing. And so that was my job. And I did it for, financial, operational, IT, all the different things that a company does. I was there to make sure they were doing it right. A lot of travel, a lot of this and that, but I was so focused on that and going for so much. At points in my life, I was traveling 90%.
And
so
in your job, it's the most sedentary job there could be on the planet. It's just one piece of paper after another, sitting in a chair all day, every day, right?
Hours and hours in an airplane, hours and hours in a chair. Absolutely. And the stress level is off the charts because once I made it up to the top position, there's basically two people in the company that are responsible for the whole company. And that's the CEO who gets the big bucks and me. And so
The
if
founder.
something failed, if something went wrong, like we had a mishap with financial reporting, and I'm sitting in a board meeting and they're like, Allan, how did you miss this?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, totally.
So I was I felt as responsible for the company as the CEO does.
And in terms
And
of,
as
you talk about the physical stress, I totally understand that. But another thing that happens with people who travel all the time is your eating sucks, right? Because you're in a
yeah,
strange place, you don't have any food, you're in a hotel. And what do? I mean, you jump into McDonald's or you go to,
you
Subway or
go to the
whatever.
hotel bar is what you do.
In the hotel bar, and you get fucked up, try and find divorced women
You
the
go to the
next week.
hotel bar every night. You go to the hotel bar, you order food, you order a drink, you order a second drink, and maybe a third, and then you go to bed. You get up the next day and you repeat the same thing over and over. Um, and so, yeah, it is this. There was this lifestyle problem, and it went on for years, and it was a slow decline. And the day I was 39, when I realized that what had happened, it kind of really hit me. What had happened was I was at this resort. I had taken a vacation. I hadn't taken a vacation in years.
Yep.
I'm like, okay, I've got to take a vacation. I went to this timeshare place and they're trying to sell me a timeshare. I just bought it. I said, fine, I'll buy it because now I've paid for something. I'll show up again next year. And so I bought a week at this timeshare and it was like, okay, that's my buy-in. I have to come back. And so I did that, but then they had volleyball. And so I'm like, cool, I'm going to go out there and play volleyball. Now there's 6 on a side. So this was not what I would call strenuous
Yeah.
volleyball like you
Yep.
see on TV. This was just 6 people putting around on the sand. And I had to sub out after the first game. And I was seriously thinking about going to the emergency room.
Oh my God.
Um,
You really were a
and I'm like,
middle-aged mess. My God.
right. And I'm like, good God, what's happening to me? And it hit me, I'm sitting there the next morning and I'm like, okay, I'm not who I was.
How much did you weigh?
I was well over 260 at that time.
How tall are you?
I'm 5'11". And so, yeah, I was not in good shape. I was not happy. I was fat. I was unhealthy. I was unfit. And I literally sat there on the beach and came up with the word that hit me was fat bastard.
Yeah, that's the
And
word that hit me too, but I was going to be super polite and
okay,
not use it.
well, here's the thing. If you go into a browser and type fatbastard.org, it's going to take you to my website because I bought that
Oh,
domain
did you
that
really?
weekend.
Oh, that's
Yeah, I sure
awesome.
did.
I love that. We got to talk marketing for the next 20 minutes. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
And so, yeah, so I bought that and I was like, okay, I'm going to change this. And for 8 years, I fought myself and tried to figure it out. And I couldn't until I had that moment with my daughter when, will you watch me? Daddy, will you watch me? And I was like, no. And so what I did was probably the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life, but also one of the best, is I challenged her for us to do a Tough Mudder together.
Oh, yeah.
Now,
Oh, yeah.
for folks that don't know what a Tough Mudder is,
I do.
it's about a 12 to 13 mile run, but it's not on the street. It's out in the wilderness,
Yeah.
out in the boonies, usually on an ATV style course. So it's really muddy, really hilly. All the things that make ATV fun make running in it horrible.
Miserable. Yeah.
And they just throw in 25 obstacles just for fun and giggles. So it's a strenuous, super strenuous thing. And I had no business signing up for it because even at that point in time, I was still probably over 150, 250 pounds.
Look, I've been 15 pounds overweight my whole life. Just since I came out of the chute, I was 15 pounds overweight. But like, there's something in my brain that just snaps when I hit a certain number, that I'll just go, I'm not going beyond this. And what's amazing to me about people who let themselves get really out of shape, and you're pretty far out of shape, but obviously there's people who are like in their 300s, my 600-pound life people. That's crazy. Like, do you find when you're working with people, do most people have the ability to say, okay, I'm going to get to this number, I'm just going to stop. I'm just going to just figure out what I have to do to stop gaining weight and get back in shape? Or what happens to let people just keep going and going and going and getting to that point where they just can't come back? They're too far gone.
Well, there's a lot there. Part of it's emotional. Part of it is just food addiction. They eat for the wrong reasons. They're not hungry. They're not eating for hunger, and they're not eating foods that nourish them. They're eating processed junk.
Right.
I've never met anyone who got fat eating whole food. If you're eating meat, fish, eggs, and vegetables, you are not going to get fat.
Yeah,
But
100%.
if most of your food is coming from a box, bag, jar, or can, you're asking to put on body weight. You're asking for it. So I think what a lot of people do is they don't pay attention to what they're eating. They don't pay attention to how much they're eating. They're not eating because they're hungry. They're malnourished, but overfed. And so they get to that point. You're right. Some people do. They step on the scale or their pants stop fitting. And they're like, I am not going to buy a size 48.
Right.
They just that's in their head. It's like, no, I've got my jeans going from size 36 to 46, and that's it. I'm not buying 48. So they play in that range. One of the problems with that is weight loss is not compelling. It's not
for sure
a driver. It's not emotional. No one sits there and says, I'm going to lose 20 pounds because it's the most important thing in my life. No, there has to be something deeper. And that's when my daughter, she said, Daddy, will you come and watch me?
And it just hit you. It hit you hard. I'm like, and no, you realized,
that's not who I am. And so it became this emotional why. I'm going to be a participant in my family's life. I'm not going to be a spectator. I'm going to be able to do the things that I want to do when I want to do them. And I'm not going to be a victim of this. And so it was this compelling why. And then again, the kind of the crazy vision of what does success look like? And for me, it was going to be completing that Tough Mudder with my daughter. Now, I wanted her to have a good race. So I didn't want to slow her down. I didn't want to have to leave me either, which she probably would have.
Yep.
But it was like, I want her to have a good time. I want to be able to run the race with her. I don't want to kill myself doing it, which meant I had to substantially change everything about myself.
And were you able to do it that day? I mean, did that day everything change, or was it a process and some stops and starts and some oops? Or
well, there was a lot of learning in there still. Even in that 8 months that it took me to do this, there was a lot of learning. I went in and I said, okay, I'm traveling 90%. So what can I do? Because I can't hire a personal trainer. I can't show up. I'm home 3 days a month. There's no way that's going to work. So I studied and became my own personal trainer. So that's where NASM certified personal trainer, that's where my corrective exercise and my fitness nutrition specialties all came about, was to train myself.
And you did this while you were still traveling in your auditor job 90% of the time?
Yes.
Oh, wow. You were committed, man. You were committed.
I was committed. And then I got the workouts in. So now I started looking at hotels that had decent fitness facilities. I started looking for restaurants around the hotels and looking at their menus ahead of time. So I had my week planned out of the various foods that I would be eating while I was there.
Isn't that, I mean, look, that's always the biggest thing with losing weight is really the food. I mean, working out, I'm sure you'll probably agree, right? Working out doesn't make you lose weight. It makes you, build muscles and endurance, but like the losing weight is almost strictly a food thing, correct?
It is almost always just completely a food thing. Working out can help, and working out can definitely help you keep the weight off when you're done. But you do need to be doing that separate and not thinking about burning calories. I personally think counting calories is the dumbest thing that you can possibly do. And I get a lot of flack for that because people say, well, you have to be in a calorie deficit. It's Newton's law. And I'm like, okay, well.
You don't. Those people are so ridiculous when they talk about that. Well, I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous.
Well, it is absolutely true, though. It is true. But here's the fundamental problem. I can go into a restaurant and order a cut of steak. Okay. And I can try to look that up online and it says, okay, your steak has this many calories, this many grams of fat. And I'm like, cool. But have you ever gone into a restaurant and got a steak and it had a lot more fat than normal, or a lot less fat than normal? And so if you're off a couple grams of fat, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but that's 18, 20 or more calories. And so as you start looking at food, just realize those are all estimates. Unless you truly measured that food to know what the fat content, protein content, and all that, then you don't know.
Right. And then something you said earlier, I think also counts too, is that like if nobody gets fat eating fruits, vegetables, lean meats, I mean, when you're eating real food, you don't necessarily have to count whether those carrots are 18 or 20 calories, You
don't.
But if you're eating Pringles and cereal and all that other garbage, I mean, you can count it all day. And guess what? You need 2 or 3 calculators to get up there.
Right. But 1 almond is 16 calories. So did you have 10 almonds or 12? And so, you're going through this whole process and it's all an estimate on that end. Now, here's the other side of the story. How much did I burn? Right. So I used to get on this elliptical every day. And I got on it every day, and it was my elliptical. I named her Bertha. So I had a date with Bertha every morning at 5 o'clock. Now, I was burning 600 calories in that hour. That's what Bertha was telling me. So I was putting that in MyFitnessPal religiously. And then I come back one day and someone is on Bertha. Can you believe that?
Bitch.
But yeah.
Cheating, two-timing bitch.
Yeah, I don't know. But I said, okay, well, I guess I'll go over to this other one. And so I'm on a different elliptical. And when I get done with my hour working just as hard, it says 700 calories. So now I have a favorite elliptical.
I got it. I do the same thing.
So the reality is, did I burn more calories in that hour on a different elliptical? And the answer is no. Was I even burning 600 calories? Maybe not. Again, it's an estimate. So if you're trying to compare an estimate to an estimate, well, how does that math work?
Yeah.
You can't take an estimate against the estimate and say, I should be losing. That's why you'll see those projections on like MyFitnessPal. It says, if you eat like this every day, you're going to lose 10 pounds in the next 6 weeks. But you don't.
Yeah.
Even though you did eat that way every day.
Because you always forget about that gallon of ranch dressing you threw on the salad.
Something happens. Yeah. So just the reality of it is counting calories isn't really going to get you there. It's paying attention to how your body feels. Are you full? Are you eating good, nutritious food? And that's going to get you there. And it's a slow, steady thing is the best way. Over the course of the 8 months, I managed to lose 66 pounds.
Whoa. That's 8 pounds-ish a month, 2 pounds a week straight for 8 months. That's strong.
Yeah.
That's strong.
Now, I did that initially. I ate a paleo-style food, which again, it's just whole food.
Yep.
You know, it cuts out all the grains. It cuts out a lot of other stuff that your body doesn't necessarily need. And then what ended up happening for me, and it's only because of the things I chose to eat, I ended up in ketosis. It wasn't intentional. I didn't even know what ketosis was. I just knew my breath stinks, my pee stinks.
That sounds like a Saturday night for me. I don't know.
Right. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on. So I started doing some research, and that's when I found ketosis. And I'm like, oh, so that's what this is. And I just kept eating that way. And I was able to continue to lose weight consistently. I transformed my body.
How'd you do in the Tough Mudder with your daughter?
We finished together. No problem at all. We did great. And so, there's a lot of things, like I talked about just trying to lose a little bit of weight and how emotional that can be. But I can tell you right now, there are 3 moments in my life that are super, super special that involve my daughter. The first was the day she was born.
Of course.
And when she wrapped her hand around my pinky.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
The second one is walking her down the aisle at her wedding just a year ago, which I'm not sure if I hadn't done this thing for myself that I would have even been there.
Yeah.
And then the third one is holding her hand, crossing the finish line at the Tough Mudder.
That's amazing.
And so when you start talking about middle age and being a mess, fix your mess. It's right there. And it just takes some effort, consistent effort. It doesn't start with a big thing. It starts with a little thing.
So let me ask you, so you fixed your mess and you did it with tremendous discipline over that 8 months and taking those courses. At that point, did you make a decision that you were going to devote your life to this now? I mean, because I'm guessing you're not an auditor anymore, right?
I am not an auditor anymore.
Right.
That again, looking back at it, my fat bastard moment, I didn't like anything about myself. I didn't like the relationships I was in. I didn't like how I looked, how I felt, what I was capable of doing. And I knew I was good at my job, but I wasn't loving it. And so as I got into this and I decided, okay, of course, a friend sees you in March and then they see you in November and you've lost 66 pounds. They're gonna ask some questions.
I mean, they're going to try and make out with you is what I would really expect.
Well, no. Well, maybe a couple of them did. There were some questions. I'm like, it's not this hard. And so I agreed. I decided I was going to start the podcast because there were no resources for us back then.
Yeah.
There were no podcasts for people over 40. There were no books. Every book for anyone over 40 was a stretching book. Stretches for people over 50.
That's right. And there's 2 stretches. There's only 2 stretches.
Yeah, so we were supposed to do chair yoga and stretch. That's what we were supposed to do.
Yeah.
And so it's like, so I couldn't find a coach that specialized in it. I knew there were online coaches for certain people, but there were none for us. So basically, if you were a bodybuilder trying to show prep, There were coaches. There were powerlifting coaches that would coach you online. There were bodybuilding coaches that would coach you online. But there were no coaches for people over 40. And we have to train a little differently. We can't train like we did when we were in our 20s. So I said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and start coaching some people online on the side. I'm going to start this podcast and build it up. And if this takes off, then this will be career number 2. You know, this will be after I get done and I'm retired, then I'll move into this thing. Well, I got laid off about 3 years early.
Okay.
And so I go home to my wife, and like it was in September, and I say, hey, this year's round of layoffs does include me.
How old were you at the time? How old were you?
51. And so I said, I can go and get another job doing this and make money. I'm not going to make what I'm making now, but I'll make money. But I don't like it. I don't want to do it. I don't like those people. I don't like going into a conference room when we're talking about head count and span of control, when I'm like, no, we're talking about people. This guy's got all kinds of issues going on at home and health issues. And now I've got to go around and lay them off.
Yeah.
Because you want to hit a head count number, not because you want to save money, but because you want to hit a head count number. So I flew around to all the different places we had offices, and I laid off all of my staff, and then I was laid off. And I told her in September, I said, I am not going back. I'm going to figure out this online coaching thing, and I'm going to do this. And so for the first year, she got a job just to pay for insurance, because our insurance was astronomical. She got a job to pay for the insurance, and she didn't really like the job. So I spent the year writing a book called The Wellness Roadmap. So I said, okay, well, if we find a place where we can live that has a lower cost of living, then let's go there. And so that's where the idea of moving to the Caribbean came in.
Yeah.
We picked out a few places. I mentioned Panama.
I love Panama, by the way. Panama is unbelievable. I mean, people don't really know about it. All they hear about is the canal and whatever. It's fantastic.
And so I'm on the other side of Panama and close to Costa Rica. So all the things you hear about Costa Rica with the monkeys and the sloths and the birds and all that, I got the rainforest. We've got beautiful, beautiful beaches. But here's the kicker. This is a Caribbean island that does not get hurricanes.
Is there a big community of expats down there?
Yeah. We're in a tourist zone, and so most people here are speaking English. So it's rare to find. I mean, we do find some people that'll come in and only speak Spanish, but it's not so much that like you have to learn it.
So all right, so now we're into you've got the over 40 thing, you got the podcast, you got the training, you got the everything. Like, tell me about the middle-aged messes that you find. Like, what are the problems people come to you with, and how do you fix them?
The bulk of it is like you said, weight loss. Someone has let himself get away over the course of their midlife, and they, the kids now are out of the house and usually out of college or in college, and you start turning around and say, okay, what's next? That what next gets pretty scary, because a lot of us are looking at our parents that are now needing, have foots cut off and heart stents and all the other stuff, and we're like, well, is that my path? And many of us know, actually, we're going down that path even faster than our parents did.
Yeah.
And so it's like, no, it's not my path. I'm actually going to get there sooner.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm going to be sicker, and they're going to keep me alive longer. Yeah, they're going to keep me alive longer, and I'm going to be sicker the whole time. And so we know we know that that's our destiny if we don't do something with the weight loss. I do get some people that are here, they talk to me about fitness. They want to work on their fitness. That's usually a part of it too. But for most, it is the secondary thing. I want to lose the weight, and I want to get more fit. So we start working on that to go. But the point being, if you're not who you want to be now, unless you do something, you're not going to be who you want to be when. So like my grandfather loved golf. And he got to the age of 80. He was not overweight. He didn't look like he was frail and unable, but he literally had to stop playing golf because his balance. Yeah. I'm sitting in a golf cart with him, and all the guys are going out. And this would normally have been when I was visiting. There's normally be a time when I just say, okay, I get out of the golf cart and I go and start seeing other family members. But he didn't go out with them. I'm like, what's going on? He's like, I can't play anymore.
Yeah, when grandpa starts falling out of the cart, that's when the game pretty much is over.
I don't have the balance to do a swing. I'm like, well, do you want to go to the driving range and work on it? He's like, no, I can't do it. Now, people say, well, he's 80 years old. Okay. He lived till he was 95.
Yeah.
The last 15 years of his life, he couldn't do the thing he loved the most. He couldn't make it from his chair to the bathroom in time.
Yeah.
And so there were messes he couldn't clean up that had to be cleaned up for him. And he wouldn't let me visit. So the last 5 years of his life, I never saw him.
Yeah.
And so I often say, I want to be able to wipe my own butt when I'm 105.
That's a noble goal to reach, you know?
Either way you want to look at it, I want to be able to open my own pickle jar.
Yeah.
I want to be able to
wiping
live
your
the
butt
life.
is good. No, that should be everybody's goal, to be able to wipe their butt on the day they die. They can still wipe their butt. I mean, that's that's a high bar to get over.
It is, considering what our body does if we don't train.
Right.
So I'm a big proponent of fitness training. Even if you don't think you need it, you need it.
Yeah, give me a good, Alan, give me a good case study. I always like hearing good case study. Give me somebody who came in, they were a disaster, and then now they're wiping their butt and climbing mountains and doing all sorts of stuff.
Okay. Well, one I'll give you, her name's Suzette. Okay. So Suzette is talking to me. She's in her mid 50s, early 50s. And we get on the phone and she's like, I don't think a menopausal woman can lose weight. I think I'm just destined to be fat. Let's just give it a show. Let's give it a try. You've got nothing to lose. If I can't do this for you, I'll give your money back. And she's like, okay. So we started and we got her going and she started losing weight. And we had to tweak some things. It didn't all go smooth the whole way. So there were some bumps, but she got through those bumps with support and accountability. So she worked with me for 9 months. She lost 41 pounds.
Fantastic.
She was going to the gym regularly. She's feeling really good.
Wiping her butt every day?
I assume so, because I wasn't doing it.
That should be like lesson 1, in your whole fitness program is wiping your butt 101.
Well, from a movement science perspective.
No, it's hard. There's the twisting, there's the reaching. There's the pulling.
There's getting up from your recliner. There's moving across the floor at a rapid pace. There's sitting down and getting back up, which is a squat.
I have been doing podcasts as long as you, Alan, but I got to tell you, this is the first conversation I've had about wiping your butt. And I think I'm doing it in every podcast I do from now on. We're going to have a wiping the butt section. Yeah. So let's talk about, just tell me where people can find you. Tell me the different groups, different books you're doing. What are the different elements of your program?
Okay. So yeah, I do have a program. I have a couple of different programs. So usually I like to talk to somebody and find out exactly what they need, because, if someone comes in and needs to lose 125 pounds, there's no sense talking about 12 weeks. You might need 12 months. And so let's just be real about it. So I have different programs for different people. We'll sit down and have a conversation, figure out which one will be right for you. So I do the coaching online, which is really cool because you work out when you want to, not when I can meet you at a gym. So you're not stuck going to the gym at 5 o'clock, because that's when the trainer has an opening. Nutrition coaching, fitness coaching, and the accountability support and guidance. That's my coaching program. I have the 40 Plus Fitness podcast, and you can find that anywhere and everywhere that you listen to podcasts. I have a Facebook group, which you can find at 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/group. I also do have the book called The Wellness Roadmap, which you can find on Amazon or other places where you buy books. I also did it in audiobook. So if you're more inclined to like to listen to things because you're listening to a podcast, there's an audio version of it. It's at 5.5 hours long. But obviously, if you put it at a higher speed, I already think I talk a little fast. But if you like to hear me faster, you can speed it up. You get through that a lot faster.
Get the Minnie Mouse version of it. It'll be great.
Yeah. So I've got those. But you can go to 40plusfitness.com/midlife mess. No space, just 40plusfitness.com.
Oh, shit. You're stealing my title. Alan, wait a sec. Hold, I got a patent infringement suit here. How dare you?
I'm giving you some link love, which you should appreciate.
I appreciate it.
From a marketing perspective. And also then all the links that for anything you might want will be there. Be very easy to go to. So 40plusfitness.com/midlife mess. No spaces. And that, like I said, I'm a little
bitter. Alan, okay. Just a little bit. Well, but I appreciate the cross marketing, I guess.
There will be a link directly where you tell me you want there to be a link. So there's link love coming from my website. Fantastic. And also this is an easy way for me when I'm talking to my audience to be able to say, hey, I was I was on Dan's podcast. He's okay. I was great.
You
You
were
should probably go
fantastic.
listen
I
to
was average. I love middle-aged messes who wake up one day and say, I don't want to be a mess anymore. And I'm going to get out of this. And they not only figure out a way to get out of it, they figure out a way to share their knowledge with other people, which allows others to get out of it as well. And that's really what this podcast is about. It's not about like bitching and whining, complaining about the problems, because we all have them. We all kind of slow down. We all get tight. We all lose our strength. But, not everybody gives in. Some people like you and other people I have on my podcast, they're like, they're like, hey, I'm done with this. I want to get back to where I was, and they figure out a way to do it. So I appreciate your story.
Thank you. And no, you don't have to wake up every morning and be in pain. You can do some things about that, and hopefully you will. So thank you for letting me be here, Dan.
That's awesome. It's been a great time with you. I appreciate it. All right, like, subscribe, go to Allan's website, watch his podcast, like and subscribe for him as well. And we'll see you next time on Middle Aged Mess. Thank you.